pull up a chair, grab a beverage, and let's dig in to this hot off the press copy of Quilted, the latest issue in the Encyclopedia of Inspiration. I'm Hazel. This is Hazel and Aka Design, and I'm so glad you're here to peek over my shoulder and see what this beautiful book holds. I have, it's March 7th or 19th as I'm filming this, and I've already had a busy morning. We're in the thick of Masterboard Madness 2026. I just finished watching Trish's video for today, and it was a good one. So you need to check that out along with all the other creators. I lit this candle. It's part of my whole use it, don't store it, MO this year. And I just wanted, I didn't realize it till I caught sight of, I don't, obviously I don't want to spill wax everywhere, but can you see that there is this candle cup inside with the wax and this gel-like stuff around it that is making little pinholes of light shine up. So tell me this, what could possibly go wrong having a lit candle in a room full of paper, fabric, and flammables? Like, hey, my husband hates the idea of me burning candles. His line is, do you want to live in a granary? Meaning when the house burns down. So I'll set this off to the side, and you and I will keep, we'll keep watch. Anyway, Quilted. If you want to know more about the very talented genius behind Uppercase magazine, I'm pouring through an old issue. This was from 2014, I think. And the Encyclopedia of Inspiration. Watch the interview that I did with Janine Van Gool on the Heart to Heart playlist. So, I've done a few flip throughs of these books, and people have appreciated seeing them. So here I am again. Now this book was first issued, let's say this is a reprint. Of course, first published in 2019. Of course, I was oblivious in 2019. So I got in on the reprint. So what sets these books apart is the slipcover. That's probably not the right word. But with some creative folding, you have the choice of 4 different, book jackets. I'm not going to put it on for this flip thing. I think I might choose this. Well, I like this graphic one, but I also like this vintagey one. That looks a lot like feed sack to me. So I think I'll use this one but when I am done and put it with the others. Okay, so, the temptation is to read you every single thing. But of course, that's not possible, either for my voice or your time. So, I've already told you that this is a reprint from 2026. So the way these books are structured, there are, there's a certain, depending, I guess. I shouldn't make generalizations. In some books, there is a lot of actual research, like the Notions one comes to mind. A lot of information. In addition to a book like this, where it's the work of featured artists. So, it's easier to flip from the back forward. So I guess we'll start there and see what we can see. And you can just tell by the as these images are flashing by, how much color and inspiration is in great grandmothers. How do we get there from here? It looks like maybe this guy is using quilting as a way. My quilt is calling and I must go. Cool. Looks like this man may be using, love those colors, maybe using quilts as a vehicle for messages. Oh, those are spoons. Huh. Hanging on a quilt. Now, of course, there really aren't any captions, but can I quickly find... okay, so this guy is saying, establishing a quilting empire in a one-bedroom Brooklyn apartment has been tricky. This is an opportune moment to mention how supportive my partner is. I've been able to set up shop in our eat-in kitchen nook that measures about 7 by 11. I've also got a long arm machine that takes up a good chunk of our bedroom. It's cozy. I've got one chest of drawers where I keep all my cut-up shirts and quilting fabric, and I try not to let that spill over. When it fills up, I stop bringing home any more fabric until I've made some room. That's a good piece of advice. My cutting table is also my ironing table. I still iron on the same miniature dorm room ironing board that I've had for nearly 20 years now. His favorite iron is a little travel iron. His space is tight, but it keeps me from indulging my fabric hoarding tendencies. Okay, so again, I'm kind of reading back to front here, but he does call this one, I guess, a protest banner. But I need to pick this up and take a closer look. I can't tell if those are plastic. Well, maybe they are plastic. Perhaps maybe some rubber things in there as well. I thought they might have been wooden spoons that got painted, but I love those. Which just goes to show that you can turn anything into decor. Okay, so clearly there's, messaging here. And we can't afford to spend too much time on everyone. That's Zach Foster. Art quilts. Okay, so maybe I'll just read occasionally, things that maybe are of most interest to viewers of my channel. Workspace. Until quite recently, I had three. Let's see who we're talking to here, or who's talking to us. Trisha Royal. I see myself as part of a long line of women who have made textiles, an unbroken thread that stretches back through the millennia. Textiles have always been an integral part of everyday life from cradle to grave. Okay, so she says, until recently, I've had 3 distinct spaces devoted to my studio practice. A very small sewing room with a built-in desk and bookshelves, as well as a combined sewing machine, cutting table, and a large ironing station. Another bedroom where I stored my fabric and yarn stash. She's adding, I also weave, knit, and crochet. My loom and my long arm. And there's a brand name there. On a 10-foot frame, and a corner of my garage where I stored my inks, paints, and printing tools. This is sounding a little more like more than three distinct spaces. In the latter, I also had a sink and lots of storage for miscellaneous arts and craft supplies. It wasn't the prettiest space. I had to share space with the cars, bikes, tools, and luggage, but it was functional. I was grateful to have it. When the weather was nice, I would open up the garage super wide and let in the California sunshine and mild weather. I just moved to Los Angeles, my blah, 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 rose hedges, blah, blah, blah. Light-filled room as a studio and quilting, as a sewing and quilting studio. So I think that's a proof positive that our supplies and our work spaces will expand to fill the available space and a bit more. At least that's been my experience. There are those octagons. I have a bunch of those that I thrifted. In fact, I have a little pile of them here because come hell or high water, I need to use them. Isn't this just beautiful? See, way back when I was a newlywed, the province, I'm in Alberta, Canada, the province actually had on staff district home economists that provided outreach and education and courses and so on to people in rural Alberta. And I guess the masculine version of that was the district agriculturist. So who provided information. Like between the two of them, they provided information on farm budgets and, I signed up for a tailoring course. I can show you the pieces. And also a quilting course. And my intention was to make a wall hanging. I think I still have that somewhere. Never completed. I don't think I have the attention to detail and precision measuring sewing that good quilting requires. So, yeah. Anyway, hopefully you're one of those people who maybe enjoys quilting. I'm just enjoying the visuals, the colors, the tactile part of it. Okay, this lady, who is she? Oh, looks like she might dye her own, or paint her own fabrics. Stephanie Sims. Sims? Okay, workspace. I was really lucky to have found a great light-filled studio space with a high ceiling in Vancouver that I share with 3 other artists. I need a studio outside my house because the quilt painting takes up a lot of space. Also, you can't really use the dyes I paint with in a domestic space as they're toxic in powder form. What killed you? Oh, my quilt. So I tend to do my wet and messy work in the studio. I have an office at home where I can do admin work and work on my surface pattern design and smaller paintings. I do tend to spread out though and have been known to overtake the dining room too, especially when I'm sewing a quilt. I'm lucky that we're all makers, so spreading out is part of the modus operandi at home. My studio's about a half-hour walk from home, and I'll have the chance to get some fresh air and get into a good headspace before I arrive. Okay, so you can see that her work is pretty graphic in nature. And I have to say pretty eye-catching. Those aren't my favorite colors. However, she's not doing it for me, so. Okay, mothers and daughters. I designed and made a quilt for each of my twin daughters as a celebration of their lives and of motherhood in 2016. Each quilt is made from a combination of hand-dyed cloth, pieces of the kids' favorite outgrown clothes, and found and donated fabric. Each quilt was quilted by hand with cotton, chasico, and fluorescent threads. The compositions and colors reflect each child's distinctive personalities. And these are twins. My daughters and I work together on drawings, paintings, collages on which the quilt designs are loosely based. The quilts also include fabrics we dyed together at home and pieces of their sewing and hand quilting. My hope is that their involvement will lead to a strong sense of attachment to the quilts. Our collaborations began the story of each quilt, but I hope that the stories of these quilts will grow over time and that they will stay with my daughters, be cared for and repaired if necessary, and perhaps be passed on and survive as heirlooms. Ooh, like that. But see, you know, I can appreciate this from a design and aesthetic perspective, but I shudder to think about the not so much the math, but the precision that is required. That's a bit about workspace, but there's really nothing so much to share there. And you can also see that sometimes quilt design, like, you know, so many of the quilts that many of us may have grown up with or inherited or seen our ancestors use were kind of, you know, crazy quilts where they weren't following a precise geometric or, you know, traditional pattern, but we're basically using up every little scrap that they had, and that's sort of what this reminds me of. And of course, if I was to do something like this today, I would still be probably driving myself crazy trying to make it pleasing from a color perspective, even if it was all kinds of disparate colors, textures, and patterns. Yeah, my sense of color gets offended when people really throw everything but the kitchen sink into it. I'm very blessed to occupy a spare bedroom in our home. It is all mine and all for color quilts, my shop inventory where I sew my quilts and where I feel most inspired. I have 2 tables, one for cutting, since I knew I need a good bit of space for cutting yardage and preparing website shop orders to mail out. The other holds my sewing machine, another small cutting mat, and usually stacks of fabric that I may or may not be currently using. It is a fabric lover's paradise, to me anyway. It's also my film studio. I've recently discovered a love of making video tutorials and started a YouTube channel. So it looks like her channel name is probably Color Girl Quilts. Now, I don't know. I don't think I asked Janine, and I don't think she volunteered the information. When a book is reprinted, is it updated at the same time, or is it just a duplication of the original? So I don't know. So I guess keep that in mind because the original was done 10 years ago. That looks lovely. I'm always noticing colors. I especially love flowers, plants, and textures in the natural world and tend to translate those images to my color palette. I really enjoy drawing and would love to learn to paint. I think that when you enjoy making and creative activities, all of your interests and hobbies, as well as everyday life, start to come together to influence your style. That's Sharon McConnell speaking. She covered her sewing machine with stickers. Sunday best. That is pretty bold. I'm glad she added some black there to settle it down a bit. Look at this. The gradation of colors. What a cute little sewing machine. It says Vulcan on it. Okay, my wife and I share a studio in the upper bonus room in the house we built. Linda's looking forward to moving her studio into one of the kids' bedrooms because my side tends to invade her size. Geez, I've never seen that happen. We're looking to downsize and move to a more remote location on an island, so the studio is a bit of a compression zone. When I say downsize, I only mean the house part, not the studio. I think that will be larger, while our actual living space will be considerably less now that our kids are on their own. I'm not a tidy or organized quilter. I like seeing all of the fabrics and trims and buttons. It invigorates me, but I also do often lose things in the studio because something else gets put on top of it. This would drive most people batty, including Linda, who is ever so tidy. I revel in it most days with occasional bouts of cleaning that honestly never last long enough. I know I have books and fabric that I won't see until we move. I think some of us can identify with that, truth be told. So, oh, look at how nice. This is beautiful. Okay, so who is doing the talking here? Scott Hansen. Now this is true, I have more ideas than I have time to create. If I ever hit a creative slump, I can always go back to a sketch or finish up one of my many works in progress. Where are these people located? Must be in the U.S. because it says U.S. Bicentennial. Rarely concern myself with the final income. I'm constantly amazed by how much more I like the quilt in real life than in my sketches. I do not really see their location. Mind you, he's talking about moving to some island. Maybe they didn't say where this guy's located. How are you able to support yourself in the quilt industry? I currently work at Costco resolving IT problems for employees 5 days a week. This pays our mortgage and takes care of our health insurance. These guys are probably in Oregon, or were at the time this was printed. Anyway, you see why I need to read this from cover to cover? Okay, my husband and I recently moved from a 3-story house into a small apartment when we relocated to Denver. I used to have an attic studio with a big table and lots of built-in storage, but now many of my tools and supplies are in storage, and I don't have dedicated space to quilt in. I pared down my stash to a small cabinet, oh, that must have hurt, that holds my most loved supplies, mostly linen, wool batting, and hand quilting thread. My small space is actually a big reason I've incorporated more hand piecing into my work, and at least for this season, I like keeping a minimalist studio and using the lack of space and storage almost as a creative constraint. My quilts now are more thoughtful and more simplistic, also smaller, but they're made with techniques that are new to me, like hand piecing, that help infuse more meaning into my work. Okay, so very much a woman looking for a silver lining, and that's essential, and that's kind of what we should all be looking for, finding out the upside of whatever our current situation is whatever current situation we're in. Brianne Menardi Morrison. Is that still her? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, keep going. Look at that ironing board. Okay, for those of you who are unfamiliar, this is called an ironing board. It folds flat. It has a padded cover, and it helps you make stuff look crisp and flat and fresh. Through trial and error, I began to use fabric in a painterly manner. While there is no paint in these works, I refer to them as paintings. Conceptually, my work carries on the tradition of women as makers, pushes the boundary between fine art and craft, and questions the definition of painting. So if we can paint with paper, we can paint with fabric too. I have two homes, a wooden house in Seattle, and a pine log cabin in the Okanagan Highlands. In both places, I have a quilting studio. Neither are big, and both sit right in the center of the action with no doors to close out my family. Oh dear. I like to have my studio at home just as I just might get started on a project in my pajamas in the morning or work late into the night after dinner. I don't need much to get to work. A dependable sewing machine, a high-powered iron and wide ironing board, and a big design wall, plus impeccable scissors and good thread. I have parallel gear in both spaces, so one studio does not feel inferior to the other. Tidy as a pin between projects, either studio looks like a creative tornado hit it when I'm engrossed in my work. Although the studio gets disheveled, the piles are in constant motion as the quilt design begins to get resolved. All I can say is I can't get creative if I can't get messy. Well, amen to that. So clearly she is designing some of her own projects rather than going with, traditional patterns. I'm not interested in making a quilt that someone else has made. Instead, I challenge myself to produce something that has never been seen before. Patricia Bellier, I don't know. Although I was a late starter, I believe everything in my life led me to be a quilter. Quilting is my calling. I love the graphic quality of quilts, the act of making, and the final tangible product. I think that can describe a lot of people in the paper crafting realm as well. Okay, workspace. I share a home sewing studio with my sister in the master bedroom of the house. We have a cutting table, a table for our sewing machines, and a table for our sergers, and a couple shelving units filled with fabric, plus other fabrics scattered around here and there. We work in the studio daily, before or after work, on various projects. I love that we can spend time together working side by side and the creative energy that happens when we're both in there. We dance around each other as we work and clean up after each other. I love that I can wake up early to work or stay up late and my bedroom is just a few feet away. We are very lucky to have the space we have. I'm very grateful for it. I find inspiration in many different traditional styles of quilting, but I'm not a purist by any means. In art school, we were taught that as artists, your job is to learn the techniques and rules of your craft and then challenge and break those rules. Look at those peonies. I mean, that's not and lupins. We're not supposed to be looking at that, but honestly, it's hard to, and her lovely hair. Kind of hard to miss. Oh. These girls got a big spread. But you can see they're making garments as well. Quilted clothing. I love mixing colors and prints to create unexpected combinations, creating a style that is bold and playful. The garments I create are usually very simple and utilitarian in form to allow for the textiles to shine. Maybe I don't know how long we've been at this, maybe I should start at the beginning, do a little bit from that end, and leave the middle kind of. Without trying, I ended up with a sewing basket collection. Oh, that's Janine right there. Quilty by association. Okay, so this is her introduction. First of all, let me confess I'm not a quilter. I have made one quilt from start to finish, and that felt like full-on disaster, which in retrospect I blame on my inexperience at not recognizing that the tension of my sewing machine was malfunctioning. This quilt now resides in my son's bed, and he doesn't mind the puckers and imprecision, so I guess it wasn't a real failure after all. The only disappointment being the gulf between my expectations and reality. I also have numerous quilts in progress. An English paper-pieced hexagon design that combines vintage feed sacks with fabrics from my collections released through Wyndham Fabrics. It's going to take years to complete. A quilt designed for my third collection with Wyndham Fabrics Circular Logic that will also be entirely made by hand. And another machine piece quilt I've titled the Sunrise Quilt that I'm quilting by hand with a big stitch. Maybe I would enjoy quilting more if I did it all by hand. There are also various patchwork pieces, improv experiments, and projects that I suppose are UFOs, unfinished objects. But that's okay. I love strolling eBay, sometimes buying UFOs from bygone eras, unfinished feed sack quilt tops being my weakness. Maybe someday my own unfinished pieces will be interesting and covetable artifacts of this time. My love for quilts is genuine and generational. My grandmother was a professional seamstress who made drapery. She was also a quilter who made beautiful quilts and blankets from old clothes and scraps. I treasure her quilts and use them often, with just one delicate one with a white background stowed away for safekeeping. My mother is a prolific quilter as well, and I'm grateful for her help in making sample quilts. So this is the Sunrise Quilt. Classic curves ruler. So that must be a tool that... Okay, here above, items made for my debut collection with Wyndham Fabrics. The low volume quilt on the wall was made by Cheryl Arkeson. Okay, so my mother is a prolific quilter as well. I'm grateful for help making sample quilts for my fabric lookbooks. And I get my work ethic and attention to detail from her. I have full intentions of being a quilter someday when I have more free time. In the meantime, I'm fortunate to be quilty by association. Through the collections I've created for Wyndham Fabrics, I've had the opportunity to design many quilts and see them come to life through other people's skills at assembly and pattern making. I've met many inspiring quilters in person at quilt markets and virtually via Instagram, many of whom are featured in this book. The world of quilting is vast with an infinite range of aesthetics, influences, heritage, and culture. This book is but a small sampling of quilting talent pieced together from professional connections, admiration, and friendship. I could probably do a tote bag. Quilting reminds us of the artistry and ingenuity of our ancestors and allows us to explore our natural creativity. The craft slows us down in an ever-busy world and connects us to a welcoming community of kindred spirits. Okay, these are called Here and There Squares, designed by Janine and made by Bonnie. That's probably her mother. And Janine did talk about her mother and her grandmother when I interviewed her. Need I say anything? When you see this, need I say anything? I do sew some quilts, but most of my time is spent designing fabric, designing quilts and quilt patterns, and generally running the business. Alison Glass. Oh my goodness, that's scrumptious. I wish the woman could get over her fear of color, though. It So sad. Okay, workspace. I have lived in 4 places since starting the business. Up until our current home, I have always worked in a portion of the living room. See, that would drive me crazy. We finished the walk-up attic in our current house to serve as a studio and an online shop. It works well, but as things have grown, the space has become busy and full. After a couple of years, I moved my workspace to a space at the bottom of the stairs that lead to the studio. I find that I prefer to work closer to my family so that I'm not separate from what's happening while working probably too many hours. That's an interesting concept. It is what I'm used to, and it is a good choice for now. I imagine it will shift again at some point. It's also easier to concentrate my own work outside of the activity and fullness of the studio space. Flower shop. That's kind of a very modern take. I like the simplicity of that. And who doesn't want a gem? My aesthetic is crisp and clean, vibrant but not loud. I abstract intentionally accessible imagery, inviting points of connection from the viewer to spark discovery and discussion. Looking back at my body of work in the last 3 years, it seems a bit eclectic, but I can describe it as flexible and contextualized. Each project comes with its own language, and the common denominator is how I, as an artist, interpret and convey that language. Unbelievable. I could make a pin cushion. Oh, dear. I don't want to read this whole thing. Oh, maybe I should read the first paragraph. Okay, the title is Collaborating with an Unknown Quilter. So my mind immediately ran to those things that we have found in thrift stores that are, quilt covers or pieces of quilts or quilts that are kind of a little far gone. I'm relatively new to quilting, and so far my work tends to be a bit experimental, offbeat, imperfect, and bold. I'm a fan of vintage textiles and often go shopping at antique malls. I usually come across old, unfinished quilt tops and wonder, is it okay to buy them and use them? It would be interesting to buy something traditional and vintage with my modern aesthetic. But cutting into a quilt top that isn't mine makes me nervous. Am I breaking some unspoken rule of quilting? Are the police going to get mad at me? I talked to a handful of quilters I respect, and they agreed. If it isn't of historical significance and you retain its original use as a quilt, then you're good to go. I found this busy checkerboard quilt top and thought it was pretty, but extremely busy. I guess this one here, the blue one. And it had no contrast. I thought it could use my help. It could be something more dramatic and visually interesting if I could rework it. So I bought it and stared at it for months, hesitant to cut into it until I had a very clear game plan. Created big, strong, solid, abstracted lake surrounded by... Yeah, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure that was a good decision. Just my opinion. Look at this. Bill, what did you do here? There are many ways to approach quilts and look at them. I like to let them speak to me as much as possible, so I look at what's there, the technique, the creative choices, and even the number of patches and stitches. Most quilts do not say who made them, but the quilts say things about their makers, their personality, and their lives. Okay, there is a caption here. Pieced quilt, circa 1970, Oregon. I found this work of art made entirely of polyester. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you wouldn't get that with cotton. Polyester, holy cow. at a flea market in Tigard, Oregon for $35. I didn't try to barter. I just paid and ran. Start the car. This one is called Bible Story, 1979. This one is called Dresden Plates, 1975. Look at this. Pieced and appliqué quilt, 1975, Florida. In the 1970s, millions of Americans learned to make quilts, and originality reigned supreme. This groovy, kaleidoscopic quilt is a great example. Yeah, this to me looks like collage, that I could spend hours looking at it. We don't have hours. Okay, applique quilt, 1970. This quilt came from a collector in New Mexico, found it through the Goodwill auction site. A quintessential rendering of the 1970s, perhaps as a child would have seen it. I had to have it, but it took several years for me to convince the other collector to sell it to me. That is a beautiful thing. Okay, I gotta speed up here. Those hearts are just kind of free floating there. They're not, what is that style where you see the little ties? The threads, the yarn that's holding it down? My favorite thing about quilting is how many different ways there are to do it. If something doesn't feel right, you can always change things up to make it better. Lately, I found myself wanting to explore more techniques, traditional patterns, and other ways of working. It can be easy to make things the way you like to make them, but I found that seeing other ways to do things can help you find good tricks that you can cross over to other things. I like connecting those dots. That's a pretty dark palette there. Steal away to Jesus. Okay, I developed the Song Quilt project in early 2016 as a way to explore how women's voices and traditional women's work connect us, challenge us, lift us up, and help us understand who we are. Each song quilt visually interprets a folk song from the American South or the Russian Arctic. I was lucky enough to travel across the U.S. and Northwest Russia, interviewing women and gathering their songs and stories. From these field recordings, I created visual transcriptions of the folk songs shared with me using a notation method I invented that translates pitch into color and rhythm into shape. That is quite the story. Okay, that looks like it could have some fortrail in it too. This looks... Oh, these are just sections. It's not actually assembled yet. I don't like to be just one thing. I like to try things, play, and do as much as I feel like doing. Oh, Cheryl Arkinson. That's the one that was mentioned in the Janine's intro. Have you ever had a quilting or creative failure? What did you learn from it, if anything? All the time. And you have to learn from it. It's the only way you get better. Then again, what counts as a failure? Getting the time to sew is a win, no matter what happens. Creating is good, even if it doesn't turn out like you expected. Too many times I've spoken to quilters early in their journey, and they lament not being able to make the quilts they want to make. Show quality quilts or complex designs. What everyone needs to remember is that everyone was a beginner once. Honestly, didn't we just talk about this with Kit Bell in last night's Heart to Heart. We only get better by making. You can't play Rachmaninoff on the piano right after you learn chopsticks. But the more you play and practice, the better you get. With each new project, you should learn something, whether it's about color, value, grain, pressing, seam allowances, binding techniques, whatever. Okay. Again, a reminder to be kind to ourselves. Strong women taught us to quilt and to fight. I'm surprised, to be honest, that there are a few men in this book. I wouldn't have really thought that that was the... that there would be that many men doing quilting. Oh, just a minute. I think there's a short documentary film that I saw. Oh, quilting in jails. And how these prisoners, it was probably Netflix, how these prisoners are giving back to society by quilting and donating their quilts to charities. It was very inspiring, and I was pretty darn impressed with those guys. You know, you see a guy with these big, rough hands and, you know, neck tattoos and whatnot. And there they are, you know, pinning and sewing and talking about color. It was quite exciting. If I can find that, I might try some way to link that in, or at least give you a few more clues in the description box. But I imagine if a person Googled prisoners quilting on Netflix, that probably would take you there as well. I like this color combo. I aspire to connect with other people through my art, creating work that is visually compelling, technically interesting, and psychologically uplifting. Oh my goodness. Looks like she has a favorite color palette to work in. See, this is mind-blowing to me. The millions of little pieces. When I retired from teaching, we remodeled our garage to create a large studio. I love having a dedicated space where I can walk away from ongoing projects and return with everything still in place. I have a huge work table, yes indeedy, several different kinds of sewing machines, ample cabinets for storage, and a variety of portable design walls. My fabric is organized into trays and totes, tucked away in cabinets and stored under tables on rolling platforms. I dye my fabrics and do other messy work in our new garage, which is adjacent to the studio. Our Alaskan winters can be long and dark, but winter is also prime studio time for me. I love that I have a wall of south-facing windows which invite the sun in during the day, and banks of full-spectrum lights that keep my space light and cheery when the sun fades. It is a bright and happy place to work. I would have liked to read that to you, but unfortunately, we must keep moving. I love looking at people's spaces. Fabric mutt. I actually have 3 workstations in our home. The first is my teacher's desk where I grade papers and tutor my daughters since we homeschool them. It's a great setup because it allows me to spend so much time with my girls, but also gives me the freedom to do my creative work on the side. In our guest bedroom, I work on my computer to create fabric collections and sewing patterns. I keep a set of files in there to organize my patterns, sketches, and design inspiration. My sewing workspace in our upstairs loft is by far the largest area. That's where I keep my sewing machine, cutting and ironing stations, and a large fabric stash organized by substrate and color. I have vintage art and objects at each of these spaces, many of which have been passed on or gifted to me by family, and I love seeing all the color and glorious designs everywhere I look. Getting to do my own work in my own home is the best of all worlds for me. I get to have fun and be creative while spending my days with the people I love most. It just doesn't get any better than that. Look at how the books are filed by color. Oh my goodness, that looks like a parachute size. 21 by 21 foot tessellated blanket fort. My first quilt was made for a month-long slumber party tour called We Are Responsible for Our Dreams. The project was a nomadic platform for collective dreaming, shared experience, and utopian visioning. Wow. Just to circle back to the Masterboard Madness collab, Gwen did her video on tessellating, a tessellation type design, so I need to try that as well. She broke it down into pretty easy steps, so we'll see. I'm just so grateful that people are bringing such good ideas to the collab. Looks like the stitching here is a big part of it. I believe it's important to see real art in real life regularly and often. Its inspiration is inexplicable. There is no better way to get motivated and inspired to create than to look at, talk about, and read about art. Well, isn't that the truth? And that's partly why I do these flip throughs. I love that. My business and family life is made up of 1,000 tiny jobs a day, so the time I get to sew for long stretches with a peaceful mind is a real joy. I bought those kind of quilt templates online because I thought that was, see, that's what the back of that would look like if I did something with these octagons. I have a sewing room at home that is basically used as a storeroom because it's cold and dark. I do most of my stitching in the lounge room. Our workshop for cutting orders is a 5-minute drive away. Working outside the home hasn't really worked for us. If something breaks down or a new code needs testing, Tim has to drive over after dinner and attend to it and call me to ask questions because the kids are in bed. It's hard to work together because somebody is always home with the kids. We're currently in the process of building a house with a studio attached. That will save us rent and allow us to work with the family around. I can't wait. That one is Tales of Cloth. In your own words. Oh, okay. And some of those are, well, I guess maybe they're all hand stitched. This collaborative quilt is a celebration of women, of the individual qualities that make us who we are, and of our strength when we come together in community. On International Women's Day 2018, I put out a call asking women near and far to send me a hand-stitched word of empowerment that best describes them. The idea was to create a quilt that would acknowledge and honor ourselves in a positive way as we still work towards equality. A total of 196 words were collected from across the world, each with a unique voice and personality of the woman who stitched it. As an unexpected bonus, I also received many beautiful letters explaining why the women chose the words they did. They shared powerful stories of strength, pride, joy, and grace. It was an honor to hold on to these words, and knowing the stories behind them made it even more meaningful. Each word was placed in its own circle, which was a nod to femininity and the cycles of nature. The fabrics are wovens to represent our soft but unwavering strength. The courthouse steps design, with a fire burning at the hearth center is an homage to quilters past and present. It was quilted by Shelley Paglia. I am forever grateful to everyone who took the time to stitch a word and share their history for this project. That is quite the undertaking. Oh, look at that. For those who love pink, you're welcome. Whether your quilt is kept, used, loved by family or strangers into the future, that is not for the quilter to know. And I don't think it's the quilter's responsibility. They only need to make today. That's a pouch. That's a tablecloth. That's a wall hanging. That's a little tiny something or other. Cool, 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 cool. That's a classic design. Shells. Those runners. Because you can't, you won't, and you don't stop. Ooh, that looks like stained glass almost. That looks like Mondrian. Oh my goodness, look at that. I'm an art quilter. My work is very representational, down to the last whisker, with raw-edged, fusible applique, lots of stitching and texture. Guess she has a thing for cats. Clearly. And one pooch. This really looks like scraps here. Sort of like those old ones I was talking about. Oh. There is so much to see here. Oh my goodness. Stitch and dye. You'd think I'd almost be where we left off. I cannot believe this book. It's so beautiful. Oh yeah, I think we stopped here. Oh, no, maybe not. Welcome blanket. So that looks like free-form stitching of faces. These were given to immigrants, I guess. A welcome blanket. How yummy are those fabrics? Do you have an old granary in your yard? We do. Several. Ace and Jig Community Quilt Project. It looks like quilts, because of their nature and because they're so big. Oh, here's where we left off. Lend themselves to being community projects, or the project of a quilters guild or something like that. Haven't burnt the studio down, you'll be pleased to know. Anyway, that is Quilted. I hope you have enjoyed this teaser flip through. As always, you can go to Janine's website to see if you can get your hot little hands on something that she has published, whether the magazine or volumes of her Encyclopedia of Inspiration. Thank you so much for being here, and this was my pleasure to do this. I hope it has served, even across the miles, has served as some color inspiration and some design inspiration, and maybe some reassurance that even if your space, your creative space, is not that big, that people are doing wonderful work with it within that space nonetheless. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one.